the administrator at St. Joe's said to me is that we'll have to get rid of our self-insured plan and give it all to an insurance company and have them, the employees will have to go directly with the insurance company, and they'll lose the benefit of. So the reality is their rates, their premiums, their costs will go much higher than what they were able to achieve through the self-insured plan. So that's the reality. I don't think that the services themselves would be affected, but for the employees, things will change dramatically and they'll have to contract with the insurance company rather than the self-insured plan that they currently have now. Because they won't violate their conscience. I mean, you hear that over and over again. And it's not, we had a hearing about this in Washington. And on the panel there was a Catholic bishop, but there also was a Lutheran bishop, there was a Southern Baptist bishop, and there was a rabbi. And all of them have the same concerns about the overreach of the government. And if you think about it, I mean, how many people came to this country for religious freedom, for the ability to practice their religion? And now you've got the government saying, well, you got to set your conscience aside and you got to do what we tell you to do. And I just would say to everyone, it's not Catholic, it's not contraceptive, it's not down in the weeds, it's a much bigger issue. It's a First Amendment freedom of religion issue.
The question is, looking at how poorly a cut-only strategy is working in Spain and the UK, will you be supporting any stimulus program to help our economy grow, or because you belong to the Tea Party, will you obstruct such an initiative?
Not a member. I think George brings up a great point, that we cannot cut our way out of this debt. There's no way you can cut your way out of this debt. We're down too deep for it. But there's two reasons why I don't think raising taxes would work. First, I've already gone through it. I don't know why we would ever want to feed that beast in Washington more money. But the other piece is that when you raise taxes, you take money out of the private sector and you give it to the government to spend. And first of all, we talked about here is how irresponsible the government is in spending your money. But beyond that, you're taking money from businesses and from families who will spend that money, who will invest that money, who will hire people, who will buy equipment. And so it's a double whammy. Now, the stimulus plan, which, I mean, and I gotta say, I mentioned this earlier and I'll keep mentioning it. There's always two or more solutions to a problem, and a stimulus is a way to look at, you know, a solution to this economy that won't seem to get going. But I think we got to look at the stimulus plan that was voted on in Congress a couple years ago. The plan itself was $800 billion plus the interest, you're close to $1 trillion, and unemployment never went below 8%. In fact, it was 9%. I did not hear what the number was today.
8.1.
8.1. So it's been hovering. It can't seem to get down to where it needs to be. And if you look at the number of people who are unemployed, underemployed, stop looking for a job, that number probably goes up to around 12, 16, 18%. The numbers, you know, it's fuzzy. But it's the Keynesian economics, it's putting the money out there. And I just think the best thing we can do to get this economy going is to get the government the heck out of the way of businesses. And on the corner on Route 11, and the owner of this restaurant, he's been in restaurants, the business for 40 plus years. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know who I was, and so we're chatting. And he said, do you know how hard it is to build something in this town? He said, when you go to that town hall, tell them. You can take a little heat for a change. Tell them it's too hard. He said, all they do is tell me no. Now that's a town. And then, now just think in terms of someone who's trying to start a business, who wants to grow a business. That's the town. And then you go to the county, and then you go to the state, and then you go to the federal government. And he said to me, there's just one obstacle after another, after another. And that's what we got to change. We've got to look at the private sector, the job creators, the small businesses. We're going to go to the small business, there's a luncheon this afternoon honoring small business. And we've got to give them a message that the people are the answer to the problem, not the government. that the small businesses, the entrepreneurs, the people who are willing to take a risk or invest their money, they're the solution to getting this economy going. And what this government has done is create such uncertainty for our businesses that I hear this all the time, they hunker down and they don't spend and they don't invest and they don't hire. The healthcare law has had a profound impact on our small businesses. Profound. Because people say, I don't know if I hire one more person if it's going to put me into a different category. I don't know, we have an HSA plan that's going to be phased out in the healthcare law, and on and on. So the healthcare law. The tax rates that Joe brought up. Uncertainty as to whether at the end of this year their rates are going to go up significantly. And if they do, they have to factor that into their business plan. Because small businesses, unlike the federal government, have plans. And they don't even just plan out for a year, they plan out for 5 years. And what we've continued to do in Washington is create uncertainty. And the regulatory scheme is just a whole other issue. The regulations that this government has put into place, and again, not just this administration, it's an ongoing, it's happened on and on for years. You take the healthcare law, that's a 2,000-page bill. They generated 40,000 pages of regulations in order to enforce the healthcare law, the Affordable Care Act. How does a business, other than hiring compliance officers and attorneys to figure it out, how does a business maneuver through that? So I think that the government is in part responsible for the failure of this economy to get going. And it isn't, I hasten to say it, I say it over and over again. It isn't just this administration. This is a trend that has been set. And those who have been paying attention know that there's a lot of folks to blame. And we just got to change the way we do business. We passed out of Oversight and Government Reform last week a bill that came out of the House, out of our committee, it'll go to the House floor, a moratorium on regulations for 2012. So that businesses can get their head above the water and know that this is all they've got to deal with for right now. And I think that would be a good start. So we need a pro-growth economic agenda, back to George's point, a pro-growth economic agenda, and we need to create certainty for businesses so that they can plan, that they can know what the best way for them to proceed is, and I think we can get the American people back to work.
Question is, what will yes.
What the end result is going to be, I think they can hear me.
You need to use that.
I just would like to know what the end result of this contempt, or citing the contempt of Congress on Eric Holder will be. What will the end result be of that? And I'd like to know the status of the Nadal Hassan case. After all, it's been over 2 years, and this is a murder. It's not a workplace incident.
I heard Daryl Issa on the last couple of days saying that they will bring contempt charges against him for failure to comply with the subpoenas for the documents regarding Fast and Furious and the gun program. I'm not certain if that's what the chairman of the committee wants to do. I think there's some, if I'm honest with all of you, I think there's some give and take with leadership as to whether or not that will go through. A lot of members, including myself, think that Eric Holder should resign, that he did a lousy. But I think that goes back to this arrogance. If a subpoena is issued, then there's a duty to comply with that and to provide the documentation at the very least. So that'll play out this week. We'll probably have an additional hearing and more information about that. With regards to the other case, I will find out what that. I don't know. I agree with you. There has been silence. That there's been no talk about prosecution. I know there's been hearings, but the concern that was more than just, like you say, a workplace incident.
The Zimmerman case, front and center, boy, in a hurry. And as far as the Black Panthers and the Nadal Hassan, all of that has been just kept in the dark.
Thank you.
The next question is from David Bruffett from Cicero. Would you like to read the question? Is, what is your position on fracking? What is your position on hydrofracking?
You know, I haven't run into a more polarizing issue than fracking since abortion. I have really been very impressed with the passion on both sides. Let me start by saying, and I will get to my position on fracking, but the reality of it is I haven't reached a position. we are trying to gather the information. We have an environmental and an energy council that we meet and we talk about. And on that council are engineers from engineering companies. We have Neil Murphy from ESF. And when Neil Murphy tells me, who I respect so tremendously for all the good that he has done in our community at ESF and his love of the environment, when he tells me that fracking is a game changer, I have paused, and it gives me pause to listen. I think that one of the biggest priorities of our country ought to be an energy policy that makes us independent of the Middle East. And back to national security issues, that would make us strong. We are sitting on enough oil reserves that we could be energy independent if we tap those reserves. I think fracking, I think we got to look at it. We've got to make sure it's done safely and carefully, but we got to rely on the experts. I think you got to rely on people like Neil Murphy, who understand and who know. And his thing was, well, maybe we can perhaps do test sites and make sure that it's done safely. But I think we have to have that conversation. In the new part of my district, we have nuclear power plants. And in the old part, over in Wayne County, we have one. Nuclear power is clean and it's safe. That we should be encouraging that. There hasn't been a new permit given since 1977. Of course, the red tape to get a nuclear power plant, but we got to look at that. I think the green energies are just fine. We met yesterday with Rhea Jaser. We had a great meeting. She is so informed. She had a symposium a couple weeks ago. One of my staff went to it. It was a great meeting about the renewables and about green energy. But in all of these, my position is that the government should not be a venture capitalist. They should not be paying up for that. And to that end, I think what we have to do as a nation, I think this is a priority, is a tax code that's fair and a tax code that eliminates loopholes, a tax code that doesn't give. I know on some people I can look at some faces and you're, well, what about the oil companies? A tax code that's fair, so that everyone is playing at a level playing field. And if someone can produce an electric car that can get you from here to Auburn without having to stop to recharge it, and that's what you want, you like a small car, and that's what you're happy with that car will sell. Because the market and people should be driving this. Whether it's an LED light bulb, or whether it is a solar panel, or a wind turbine, the market should be driving this, not the federal government. The federal government is lousy at picking winners and losers. They're lousy. So I think as a nation we have to really explore passionately and urgently and start drilling. The Keystone Pipeline was a perfect example of what we should have done in this country. You know, we passed, I don't know how many bills in the House. Start drilling. What they did after the BP oil spill, the moratorium on drilling in the Gulf. Mississippi and Alabama, they want drilling. They want that industry, and yet they're not giving permits out. And we passed a bill in the House to release that moratorium, and let's start drilling, and let's drill off of Alaska. Let's drill in so many areas where these reserves are. And when I said that to Secretary Chu, because he said, and you hear this sometimes, that the United States only has 2, maybe 3% of the oil reserves. And I said to him, that's not true. And I listed off a whole list of reserves that are in this country. And he said to me, well, I'm not the energy expert. Well, you ought to be the energy expert because you're the head of the Secretary of Energy. And so this is my concern, that there is a real priority given to the renewables, and we're taking our eye off of all the other options. But I think with fracking, going back to the question, I think fracking, we need to look at it carefully. We all live through Onondaga Lake. We all know what happens when someone's not careful. That is almost a miracle, the way that is being turned around and cleaned up. Nobody wants that. But we also have the opportunity to be energy independent with a natural gas supply, and I think it really warrants a very close look at.